The concept of sensory marketing is to use our 5 senses, or as many senses you have, when we're building brands. The problem today is that the majority of the signals sent out from corporations only appeals to the sense of sight. In fact, only 83% is focusing on sight. But what about the 17%? Well, that's on the 4 other senses. And the concept of brand sense is all about implementing those senses in a strategic way, so you start to bond with the consumer on more than one sense, because we do know the more senses you appeal to, the more loyalty you generate in the end of the day. There's a ton of research out there. I think what was so ironic when we began the project in 2005 was there was no research at all proving that the importance of the senses when you build brands and you communicate a message actually has an effect. So in 2005, we conducted the largest research study in the world about our 5 senses and brands. And since then, we have migrated into the world of neuroscience, now using neuroscience or brain scans in order to understand the importance of the senses. Because really what's fascinating about this is that this is purely non-conscious. You can't really explain what the smell is in this room or how important a tactile sensation is, but for some reason, at an unconscious level, it puts a bookmark into your brain and makes you conclude, hey, I like that or I dislike that.
One of the pieces of research that we did in conjunction with the Royal Mail, for example, a fascinating piece of research for me, was to look at a branded message in a digital media and compare their emotional response using fMRI brain scanning techniques when we look inside the brain and see the emotional connection that's created. We looked at that message on a digital media, and we also looked at exactly the same message on a piece of direct mail, a printed piece of paper. And what we found was fascinating. We were seeing that there was far more emotional connection and engagement on that piece of paper than there was on a visual screen. But also recall and memory was enhanced on the piece of paper. And what we were finding is because there were more senses involved, instead of just sight, you were also engaging touch and even smell and sound potentially as well, that you were getting that additional emotional connection because you were engaging more senses. And that's supporting a theory that we've uncovered called superadditivity, where the more senses you add, you don't just get an additive emotional connection, you actually get a multiplying effect, a real synergy that starts to play in. So it proves the value of tactile senses and smell and sound above just visual media. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've spent a lot of time creating a really robust methodology to take these theories and apply them into practice. One of the things that we learned is that it's really important to understand the deep emotional conceptualizations that we carry around with us about the brands that we interact with and engage with. So once we've done that, we can then take those concepts and map them to the sensory signals that a brand must have. And so, for example, we worked with a bank in Colombia called Helm Bank, and they were going to do something completely unique and original in South American banking. But to enable them to do that, they had to take a stance as a brand. So we helped them map out how that stance, that emotional stance and that positioning would express itself through all 5 senses. And that's created a wonderfully new, differentiated, totally engaging banking experience that's totally unlike any other banking experience in South America, actually probably in the rest of the world. Another example might be work that we did with an Italian cruise line company, where they wanted to really communicate what their Italian heritage was all about, what Italian hospitality was all about. So we took those basic values and we took the concepts of cruising and we turned that into this unique, total multisensory experience. We've created sounds that are driven from those brand values. We've created fragrances that are driven from those values. And that then becomes part of that total multisensory experience that delivers these expectations and these concepts in the minds of their customers and the guests on board the ships. Although marketing budgets have been cut, I think actually it's forcing marketing people to think more carefully about the effectiveness of their marketing spend. And so for us, actually, it's partly an opportunity because they're starting to think about how can we make our spend more effective. So, for example, tactically, if you were to add maybe another cents onto a piece of direct mail, for example, that might only add maybe 15–20% to your cost, but what we can show is that it can double the effectiveness. We've got lots of examples where we've doubled the response rate by having a sound or a smell on that piece of direct mail. So the return on investment is more than justified. We can always show a direct link back to return on investment and look at the key performance indicators of that business. So whatever the cost, we can more than justify, even when times are tight.
There's no doubt about it. It's fantastic to see the success of the integration of the sensors into the real life and into the world of brands. But what I'm probably most proud about is that there's now an agency out there called the BrandSense Agency, which really do the work and was not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. And there's a fundamental difference, because this is not just a new sound or a signature you add to the end of the TV commercial. And it's not just painting the brand's office in a certain color and then in a magical way people are more happy. It's about a very holistic approach where you really think about the entire sensory journey from the first touch point to the very last touch point. Now, if you think about that and you start to measure it, you will be incredibly surprised about how powerful this stuff is. And now finally there is some expertise in the world which really is working on it, and which have, by the way, worked on this now for more than 5 years, making it probably the most experienced company in the world within this field.
And if you'd like to find out more about sensory marketing, then please do Google BrandSense Agency, or there will be contact details at the end of this film, so we'd love to speak to you. Thank you.